Disclaimer: this story contains mature themes intended for adult viewers. Viewer discretion is advised. The kitchen was warm from the simmering pot on the stove, but the heat that rushed up my spine had nothing to do with the fire beneath it. I was standing there in nothing but my shorts, humming softly, completely lost in the rhythm of cooking, until I felt a presence behind me. Not a sound, just the unmistakable sensation of someone stepping close enough that their breath touched the back of my shoulder. My heartbeat jumped before I even turned my head. He didn't say a word. He didn't have to. The energy shifted the moment he entered the room, heavy, charged, like the air thickened just for the two of us. I froze with the wooden spoon still in my hand, my pulse fluttering at the base of my throat. Then came the touch. Not bold. Not inappropriate. Just enough to make every hair on my arms rise. His fingers brushed the small of my back, barely there, tracing a slow line as if testing how close he was allowed to be. My breath hitched. The stove crackled quietly, but all I could hear was the faint tremor of my own pulse. "Didn't think you'd be cooking this early," he murmured, with that low, teasing warmth that always did too much to me. I swallowed, trying to calm the nervous fluttering in my chest. "Didn't think you'd sneak up on me," I managed, though my voice sounded breathier than I intended. He chuckled behind me, a soft, knowing sound. When I finally glanced over my shoulder, our eyes locked. Strong, unbroken eye contact. A look that lingered 1 second too long, then two, until it felt like my knees might give out. He stepped closer. Close enough that I felt the faintest brush of his hand at my waist. Close enough that the warmth of his chest hovered just behind me. Close enough that I forgot entirely about the stove and the food and everything except the way he was looking at me, as if he was daring me to move, to breathe, to break the moment. "Careful," he whispered. "Something might burn." And he didn't mean the food. My fingers tightened around the edge of the counter as he leaned in, slow, deliberate, his breath brushing the side of my neck right before the scene cut short, my breath catching, everything suspended in the air. What he did next would change everything. The warmth of his breath still lingered on my skin long after the moment froze between us. I stood there gripping the counter, pretending to focus on the pot simmering in front of me while my heart worked overtime. It wasn't just his closeness that shook me, it was everything we weren't saying. Everything we'd been avoiding for weeks. Because this wasn't just about attraction. It never was. We had history, a complicated one, full of tender moments and quiet fractures we kept pretending weren't there. He moved to lean against the counter opposite me, arms crossed, watching me with that unreadable gaze he used whenever he didn't know how to start a conversation. I felt his eyes on me as I stirred the pot, pretending not to notice, but my breath kept catching every time his gaze dipped, lingered, softened. "I couldn't sleep," he said finally, voice low. "Too much on my mind." I didn't look up. "You mean us?" There was a heavy silence, not tense, but full, like something between us was straining, waiting to be acknowledged. He sighed softly. "I didn't want to wake you. You looked peaceful for once." That stung in a way I didn't expect. "For once," I echoed, my voice barely above a whisper. Because he was right. Lately, we'd been orbiting each other like two planets slightly off course, close enough to feel the gravity, but missing each other by inches. Late nights spent on opposite ends of the couch. Conversations that stopped before the truth could slip out. Touches that were fewer, shorter, yet somehow more desperate. And beneath all of it was a quiet desire neither of us wanted to admit: we missed each other. Craved the closeness we used to have. Wanted something back, or something new, but didn't know how to reach for it without messing everything up further. He stepped closer again, slow this time, as if giving me space to stop him. I didn't. "Do you ever think," he murmured, "that we let things get too far from what they were?" My throat tightened. I think about it every night. There. Truth. Small, fragile, real. He exhaled a breath that sounded almost relieved and rested a hand on the counter beside mine. Not touching, just close enough that I felt the warmth radiating off his skin. A tiny spark leapt between us, subtle but undeniable. Then why don't we talk about it, he asked. I finally met his eyes. They were softer now. Worried. Tender. Because every time we try, I whispered, we end up here. His lips curved, not quite a smile, more like a realization he'd been fighting. And is that a bad place to be? Before I could answer, he brushed a stray strand of hair behind my ear, slow, gentle, lingering just long enough to make my pulse stumble again. The touch said everything he was afraid to speak out loud. And for a moment, standing inches apart with the stove humming beside us, the tension between us felt less like confusion and more like gravity pulling us back together, piece by piece. But neither of us knew if giving in would heal us, or break us even more. The silence between us grew heavier, tighter, as if the walls themselves were holding their breath. His hand stayed close to mine on the counter, never touching, but close enough that the warmth of his skin kept pulling my attention. It was dangerous, how easily I leaned into that heat. How badly I wanted to close the distance. But wanting him wasn't the problem. Wanting only him was. He studied my face like he was searching for something he thought he'd already lost. You didn't answer me, he said softly. Do you think being here, like this, is a bad place to be? I looked away, heartbeat unsteady. I don't know anymore. Is it because of him? His voice sharpened slightly. Not angry, but wounded. Curious. Jealous. My breath caught. There is no him. He lifted a brow. The guy who keeps texting you at night. I'm not blind. It was barely anything, a coworker who sometimes sent harmless messages. But the fact that he noticed, that he cared, that jealousy flickered in his eyes now, dark and unmistakable, it sent a shiver down my spine. You think I'm interested in someone else? I whispered. You've been distant, he said. Tensed. You pull away every time I come near you, except now. He stepped closer. Too close. My back brushed the edge of the counter as he leaned in, his breath grazing the side of my face. The air grew thick again, electric, almost reckless. If I didn't know better, he murmured, I'd think you were avoiding me because you feel something you don't want to admit. His words hit deeper than I expected. Heat rushed up my neck. You're imagining things. Am I? He lifted his hand, stopping just shy of touching my waist, hovering, teasing, close enough to make my pulse kick hard against my ribs. His eyes dropped to my lips for one suspended second before returning to mine. The longing there was unmistakable. I know you, he said quietly. I know when you're scared and when you're tempted. My chest tightened. And which one am I now? He leaned in, voice barely a breath. Both. The tension snapped so sharply it felt like the air trembled with it. Forbidden. Heated. Teetering on the edge of something neither of us could take back. And just when the moment was about to collapse in on itself, the timer on the stove suddenly beeped, slicing through the air like a warning neither of us saw coming. The kitchen had emptied out. The quiet hum of the refrigerator and the faint scent of simmering food were the only sounds. We were alone now, really alone, with no distractions, no excuses. Every step he took toward me felt like gravity pulling me forward, and every shallow breath I took seemed louder in the stillness. He leaned against the counter across from me, arms loose but posture alert, like he was testing whether I would step closer or retreat. I felt his presence in every corner of the room, warm, magnetic, almost impossible to ignore. My pulse raced with anticipation, my mind spinning with thoughts I hadn't allowed myself to think all day. "You know," he said softly, voice low, almost a whisper, "I can't stop thinking about what it feels like to be near you." I swallowed, trying to steady my trembling hands. "That might be dangerous," I replied, though my voice betrayed me. "Dangerous doesn't always mean bad," he murmured, his gaze dropping for a fraction of a second, then snapping back to mine with a daring intensity. I could feel the tension coil tighter between us, stretching every nerve ending. Each small movement, the brush of his fingers against the counter, the lean of his shoulder toward mine, was enough to make my heartbeat spike. Closer. Closer. Every second the distance remained, it felt unbearable. I felt an almost magnetic pull as he reached out, not to touch, but to hover his hand just over mine. The warmth radiating from him made it impossible to think clearly. We were dancing on the edge of something that neither of us could name aloud yet. "Why does it feel like everything else disappears when I'm around you?" he asked, his voice a mix of wonder and something darker, desire, longing, and just a hint of frustration. "I don't know," I admitted, hard hammering. "Maybe because it's too much." He smiled, a slow, knowing smile, one that promised trouble, excitement, and all the things we hadn't allowed ourselves to admit. And just as I leaned forward, drawn to him despite every rational thought screaming to stop, the lights flickered, and then went out. The kitchen plunged into near darkness, the simmering pot's glow casting long, flickering shadows. I froze, breath catching. He was still there. Closer than ever. And then, the moment shattered in anticipation. The sudden darkness in the kitchen hung like a weight between us. I could feel him closer than ever, every breath mixing with mine, and my pulse thundered in my ears. But this time, it wasn't just desire or tension, it was fear, anticipation, and a truth neither of us had been ready to face. "Wait," I whispered, my voice trembling. "You need to see something." He blinked, startled. "What is it?" I reached for the small drawer beside the stove, pulling out a crumpled envelope I had been avoiding for weeks. My hands shook as I opened it, revealing photographs I had discovered the night before, pictures of him with someone else. Not just anyone, but someone from work, someone I'd never imagined could exist between us. His eyes widened as he saw the photos. The air grew electric, charged with shock, disbelief, and something I couldn't name. I can explain," he stammered, his voice raw, a mixture of guilt and pleading. I held my ground, my heart still racing, torn between the sting of betrayal and the pull I still felt toward him. "Explain? You've been lying, hiding this from me?" "I didn't mean for it to happen," he said, taking a cautious step closer. "It was complicated. I made a mistake. But it's over. I want you to know it's over." I studied him, the flickering light from the pot illuminating his face, showing every raw emotion, remorse, longing, honesty. And despite the anger boiling in my chest, despite the ache of feeling blindsided, a tiny part of me still believed him. Still wanted to believe him. "You have to understand," he continued, voice low, "being near you, it's always been like this. I can't stay away. Even when I've messed up, even when I've made choices I shouldn't have, it's you I keep coming back to." I felt the tension shift from shock to vulnerability, the kind that makes you pause, reconsider, and let the walls crumble just a little. He reached out again, this time placing a hand lightly on the counter beside mine, close enough to bridge the distance without overstepping. "Do you want me to stay?" he asked softly, voice almost breaking. I hesitated, breath catching. Part of me screamed to push him away, to protect myself. But another part, one I'd tried to ignore for too long, wanted to close the gap between us, to test if this attraction, this messy, intense pull, could survive the storm. Before I could answer, the kitchen door creaked, startling us both. The moment froze, hanging between the choice to confront the truth or let desire guide us. And just like that, the intensity, the suspense, the unspoken longing, all of it, was poised on the edge of revelation. The kitchen felt smaller now, the heat from the stove nothing compared to the fire in the air between us. The envelope lay on the counter, a silent witness to the truth we could no longer avoid. His shoulders slumped, and for the first time, he looked entirely human, flawed, vulnerable, and completely exposed. "I shouldn't have hidden it," he admitted, voice low but steady. "I made a mistake, and I own it. I didn't want to lose you while I was trying to figure myself out." I ran a hand over my face, trying to calm the storm in my chest. My heart was pounding, a mix of hurt, frustration, and still undeniable attraction. "You should have trusted me enough to tell me. Even if it was hard." He nodded, leaning heavily against the counter. "I know. And I'm sorry. I'll do whatever it takes to make it right. I can't imagine my life without you in it." The air vibrated with unspoken tension, the kind that makes every small movement feel magnified. I took a deep breath and stepped closer, careful but deliberate. "Then prove it," I said softly, but my words carried the weight of a challenge. He met my gaze, the remorse in his eyes blending with the desire that had always simmered beneath the surface. Slowly, cautiously, he reached out, placing a hand near mine on the counter. Not touching, yet, but close enough that the electricity between us hummed louder than the stove. "I will," he whispered. "I promise. No more secrets. No more running." I let myself study him for a long moment, searching for the truth behind his words. And when I saw it, the honesty, the fear, the longing, I felt the tension in my chest ease just slightly. We were still standing on the edge, still teetering between doubt and trust, but for the first time, it felt like we could step back together. A small, shaky smile tugged at my lips. "Then we start over," I said. "One choice at a time. And maybe, one step closer to each other than we've ever been before." He smiled back, tentative, relieved, but with that familiar spark of boldness that had drawn me to him from the start. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, he let his hand hover over mine again. This time, I didn't pull away. Instead, I leaned just slightly toward him, letting the closeness settle, letting the warmth of the moment speak for itself. The simmering pot continued to hum beside us, unnoticed now. The tension, the fear, the jealousy, they were still there, but softened, transformed into something that could grow. Something real. Something ours. And as we stood there, inches apart, the kitchen became a quiet sanctuary, a place of reckoning, healing, and the fragile first steps toward reclaiming what had always been there between us. The hum of the stove had faded into the background, replaced by the soft rhythm of our breathing. The tension that had once gripped the room had melted into something warmer, gentler, like sunlight spilling through the kitchen window after a storm. For the first time in what felt like forever, I felt him there, not as a threat, not as a complication, but as someone I could trust with every unspoken part of myself. He stepped closer, carefully, as if crossing an invisible line that neither of us wanted to misstep. His hand finally touched mine, brushing it lightly with deliberate gentleness. That simple contact sent a shiver through me, not the reckless thrill of desire, but the steady, grounding warmth of connection. "I'm not going anywhere," he whispered, voice steady now, full of sincerity. "No more secrets. No more mistakes. Just us." I looked up at him, and for the first time, I saw him clearly, not perfect, not flawless, but entirely present. The man who had made me laugh, frustrated me, tempted me, and haunted me with longing, all rolled into one. And I realized that even through the mistakes, the betrayals, the tension, there had always been this thread tying us together, unbroken. "I believe you," I said softly. "Anne. I want that too. Us. Together. His smile was slow, genuine, and it reached his eyes in a way that made my chest tighten pleasantly. He lifted his hand to tuck a stray strand of hair behind my ear, lingering there just long enough to let the intimacy of the gesture speak louder than words. We stood like that for a long moment, simply existing in the space we had fought so hard to reclaim. Then, almost instinctively, we leaned toward each other, foreheads touching, sharing a breath, a heartbeat, a quiet promise that needed no words. The world outside the kitchen disappeared, leaving only the soft golden light, the warmth between us, and the sound of our steady breaths mingling. "I've missed this," he murmured, voice barely audible. "Me too," I replied, feeling a calm certainty spread through me. More than I realized. And in that quiet, suspended moment, everything that had been messy, complicated, and raw fell into place. The longing, the tension, the mistakes, they all became part of the story that led us here. To trust. To forgiveness. To closeness. We laughed softly, a shared sound of relief and joy, letting the storm of the past dissolve completely. And as he wrapped an arm around my shoulder, pulling me gently against him, I felt it, the kind of deep, lasting connection that made every struggle worth it. For the first time in a long time, I knew we were home.